Now, in this new chapter, we will be learning about the performance and the design issues. So, in recent years, the inability of Parliament to transact business in an orderly manner has been a matter of concern. So, orderly manner, what means like झगड़े बहुत हो रहे हैं Parliament में. So, the Parliament works only because of the tax we pay. So all these amenities the parliamentarians are getting, but what they are doing, they are just disrupting the whole of the quorum. So why is this, and why is it not feasible? Not only have the number of sittings decreased over the decades, but parliament had also been not able to function smoothly during the scheduled time. We examined two metrics to judge the progression in the overall functioning of parliament: the frequency of meeting and the amount of time that is lost due to disruption by some members. We also discussed some possible ways to tackle this issue. So uh, coming here, what we have to understand, like the number of sitting days in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha from 19, understand from 1952 and 2012, there is a clear downward trend from an average of 127 days in the Lok Sabha in the 1950s to 71 days since 1990. So, can this trend be reversed by a change in design, or that is amending rules and procedure? To answer this issue, it is vital to understand how parliament sessions are scheduled currently. For starters, there is no preset annual calendar. Parliament usually has three sessions a year: budget session from mid February to mid May, monsoon session during July and August, and winter session from late November to Christmas. However, the dates are not determined in advance. The President, on the advice of the Union Cabinet, summons Parliament with a 3 week notice. The only hard constraint is that the Constitution limits the gap between sessions to 6 months. Now, the structure can lead to a progressive reduction in the number of parliament sitting every year. Parliamentary debates and question hours provide the opportunities to MPs to hold the government responsible and accountable for its action. There may be occasions when the government may be uncomfortable in defending its actions and may prefer not to have debates on various issues. As the government can decide the dates of parliament sitting, it can decide to have fewer sittings when it may be under pressure to justify its action. So this is, in this way, there are such disadvantages to this thing. There have been various attempts to ensure a higher number of days. In 2009, the Rajya Sabha discussed a private members bill to amend the constitution to require the parliament sit for at least 100 days every year. However, the government, while accepting the spirit of the bill, said that it would be impractical to include this in the constitution. One way to fix the issue is to require that parliament be summoned if there is a written notice by a predetermined number of members. As the government, by definition, has the support of a majority of MPs in Lok Sabha, the number should be set as lower than 50%. For instance, the threshold of admitting a no confidence motion is set at 10% of the membership of Lok Sabha. It is worth noting that the 1960 proposal of the Indian National Congress, that is the INC, and the Muslim League to establish an imperial legislative council within the British Empire included a provision for a special session on the requisition of 1/8 of the members. So agar 1/8 of the members say like we must sit and talk about this issue, so there must be an additional sitting of the parliament. So this will be a really phenomenal thing. But what happens, the political people are, they are much lethargic in nature, and they are always doing politics and politics and politics. So for evading from a lot of things, evading from answering the question hours and etc., they are not going to accept this thing, because those are all duffers. Duffers are actually ruling the parliament. Another, and perhaps an easier to implement way, is to announce the calendar of sittings in advance soon after the Lok Sabha elections. Many parliaments, including British Parliament and the US Congress, announce their annual calendar at the beginning of each year. So this process not only helps the MPs to prepare their schedule better, but also makes it difficult for the government to avoid facing parliament when it faces accusations of impropriety. So that the time slot to disruptions as a percentage of scheduled time for period from 1962 to 2015, we are going to see now. It can be seen that the 15th Lok Sabha has been the worst performer. Okay, 15th Lok Sabha has been the worst performance, means the Lok Sabha from the year 2010 to 2014. So that is not only has there been a significant decline in the number of sitting days over the years, but also the time lost in those sittings days has also increased. One casualty of parliamentary time being disrupted in is the time spent deliberating on bills. We have seen many bills passed without any discussion. An extreme example was 23rd December 2008 when the Lok Sabha passed 8 bills within 17 minutes. Examples of bills passed without any discussion on recent years include the Competition Amendment Bill 2006, which created the framework for regulating anti-competitive behavior, and the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Bill 2010. All this shows time spent. All these are not good things. What are the proximate causes of this disruption? A former leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha argued that disrupting parliament is a legitimate tactic. So, how is it a legitimate tactic? So, parliamentary obstructionism should be avoided. It is a weapon to be used in the rarest of the rare case. Parliamentary accountability is as important as parliamentary debate. Both must coexist. If parliamentary accountability is subverted and a debate is intended to use merely to put a lid on parliamentary accountability, it is then a legitimate tactic for the opposition to expose the government through parliamentary instruments available at its command. The government is that there are occasions when the only method by which the government can be held accountable is through disruption. Is there merit in the argument? If so, can we tweak the design of parliamentary proceedings to address the underlying issues? At present, there are various accountability mechanisms available to MPs. Other than question hour, there are 4 types of debates through which substantial issues may be discussed. These include a discussion under Rule 193, a motion rule under 184, adjournment motion, and no confidence motion. Each of these has a progressively high degree of consequence for the government. Depending on the circumstances, including the positions taken by various parties, including those that are part of ruling coalition or support it, the opposition parties may prefer debate under a particular rule. For the same reason, the government may prefer to avoid that debate. So, who gets to decide whether the issues will be debated and under which form of debate? The rules provided discretion to the speaker to determine whether to admit a discussion, and if so, then under which form. The only exception is in this case of no confidence motion in the Lok Sabha, where the rules those are in like where the rules state that it is obligatory to debate the motion if 50 MPs move the motion. In practice, the all party business advisory committee decides which issue will be debated. This means that all parties have to agree on a discussion and form before it takes place. Importantly, this means that the government has a veto on the issue. When there is an issue that could be an embarrassment to the government, the opposition parties which are pressing for a debate under a particular rule are not allowed to do so. Having been rebuffed, these parties then claim that only way they can ensure accountability is block all other business until that particular issue is resolved. The resultant disruption and loss of working hour is usually resolved by government eventually backing down. There are several examples of this behavior. For example, the winter session of 2012 saw heated wrangling on whether the debate on permitting foreign direct investment in retail trade would be allowed by a vote. Parliamentary work was disrupted until the government agreed to a motion with a vote under Rule 184. Perhaps the most extreme instance took place during the winter session of 2010, when the government refused to accede to the demand for a joint parliamentary committee to examine the issue of allocation of 2G spectrum licenses. The entire session saw no work, and the government finally conceded to the demand just ahead for the next session. So these are not the very good things happening when there is an issue and one is like behaving like this. So there is no such point. And what are the possible design tweaks that can improve the process? One possibility is to claim that the speaker need not follow the decision by the business advisory committee. However, this formulation could lead to an even higher level of dissatisfaction in some situations. The speaker is elected by the house and is usually a member of the ruling party or coalition. Usually the speaker does not give up his or her party membership, As the speaker is a member of the party in power, his decision may not always be perceived as non-partisan. The trick to resolving this tangle would be reduce the discretion of speaker and the business advisory committees. There are two possible approaches towards this goal, which are not mutually exclusive. One would be to give opposition members the say to decide parliament's agenda for a certain number of days. For example, the House of Commons in the British Parliament has reserved 20 days per year during which the agenda for discussion can be decided by opposition, 17 days of which are reserved for the main opposition party and 3 for the next largest opposition party. The other approach is to require a discussion if a significant minority demands this. Parliament is already has similar rules in some cases. For instance, a no confidence motion has to be scheduled if 10% of the members of the Lok Sabha demands one. One parliamentarian has suggested that if one third of the members ask for a voting debate, it should take place. Indeed, the Congress League scheme drafted in 1916 as a reform of the Imperial Legislative Council asked for an adjournment motion to be taken up if supported by 1/8 of the members. So all these things, I know these things are heavy, but you have to understand that these are the things you have, these are the statistics also you have to keep in your mind and write in your answers. So next time we will be learning about the question hour. Thank you.